two important announcement before I move into this topic. When I took up this topic, I thought, "Acha, what will I cover?" Uh, you will realize towards the end that instead of nuances in return filing, it is nuances in not, where return not needs to be filed. So this is one of, the important aspect which we are covering. Second, when I read the word first time nuances, it seems like nuisance in return filing for non-resident. And while we covered that journey for making this presentation, we found a lot of nuisance regarding that. So thank you once again, and thank you all the members who have come in this busy and hectic schedule on a weekday to attend this session. Uh, every session has some ground rules, and we are having 5 ground rules for this session. Let's hope to adhere with them. First ground rule, it is not a lecture meeting. I'm not a speaker. It's a study circle meeting. I'm more of a group leader. So my role is to ask the question, maybe moderate a little bit of discussion, maybe to confuse you sometimes, maybe, and it's more about, opening the brain and, spark a few ideas. So that's the first ground rule. Second, again, as I said, we are not here to build any consensus. In 2 hours, you can't come to a consensus. It's more about brainstorming. So aim is not to reach consensus, but to invoke thought process. Third, when we are there, when we used to have on these good old days, when we used to have one-to-one meeting, it was very easy to understand what are people listening to, are they reacting, are they not reacting, how is the overall atmosphere. Now I'm just in front of a laptop, I'm speaking, you are listening from a laptop, maybe doing multiple tasks and something. So it's very VC has its own limitation, but let's make it interactive. Whatever queries you have during the time, please put it on the chat box. I'll try to answer them as and when I feel there's a logical break in the session, or as and when those queries needs to be picked up. I will ask few posers. We have around 8-9 posers, very small ones, but those posers are there. So I would request your participation. You may write, you may speak. Let's keep it very, very interactive. Otherwise, to speak and to listen in a front of a laptop for 2 hours, it's really boring. So let's keep it interactive and not one-sided. Second, the topic is such, the topic given to me is like when you go to any restaurant, you order for chef special. So it says nuances and non-resident filing. You can pick up whatever you want to pick up, and still there would be many more things left. Or you can pick up for your choice. So I have covered nuances which I feel are practical, which we have faced in our daily life, and I've covered those while doing this presentation. So it's not, it's not an exclusive list or exclusive thing. It's more of my practical experience of last several years, or our team's practical experience of last several years during the normal course of our practice. So it's a chef special. I hope you'll like it. And the last one, normally most of the taxations are about taxability. We have not covered nothing of taxability, and that was the most difficult part. It's all about return filing, and as I said, non-filing. So we are beyond taxability. Maybe first 10 minutes of our would be a little bit of heads up on taxability. Otherwise, it's completely return filing or non-filing. So the soul, I hope that all of us are ready for this session. And so the sole aim for next 2 hours to be, let's question everything and learn together. Let's be like PK. Okay, so let's start from the scratch and learn it. So I hope all of you are ready for this good conversation, good discussion. Let's go ahead. So what's an agenda for today? The agenda for today is we'll cover in, as I said, 10 minutes. What's the background? How does the non-resident taxation happen? Then we'll go to return filing legal issues, 139, 115, A5, G, some COVID impact, maybe which audits are compulsory, then returns, and from the procedural parts, maybe around 30 minutes or 20 minutes or so on that. Majorly chunk will be focused on legal issues. Though Form 67 is not technically part of filing of non-resident return because it's basically resident, but it's a hot topic. So I took, let's take it up. So that's the chef special for you today. That's the basic coverage for next 1 hour 45 minutes or so. So let's start with the basics. If you're still listening to this, then if That will be great if you could give a thumbs up or a yes. Let's keep it interactive. I should also feel that there are people listening to the session. And yeah, so thanks, Karnik. So background, let's go for the background. So basically, it's a small crash course for 10 minutes next for how does the whole international tax things space operate. So you have a section 6 residential status, which derive what kind of residence, what kind of residency position you are, and therefore that will determine your taxability status. So that is for residency. We know that there were few changes in last couple of years. Instead of 182 days, 120 days was shifted, and a new provision of 6(1)(a) was introduced, which says that not more, even if you are not liable to tax in any other country, and if you have a 15 lakh or more income in India, then again you would be considered a resident and NOR. So that was changed. For a company, it's fairly relatively simple Indian company or a place of effective management. So this was residency. Residency is all about. Then we have section 4, which is charge of income tax, which derives that income tax would be at income rate multiplied by your income. So it gives you that would be the rates. That's the periphery where we can move around. So it says that this would be charged at income tax at those particular rate. Then based on the residential status, you have a different kind of category. Based on residential status, you have different kind of category. So for a non-resident, income received or deemed to be received in India, and income accrue or arise or deemed to be accrue or arise in India. These are the two categories of income which are taxable for non-resident, and therefore the focus. So received or deemed to be received is fairly simpler. Accrue or arise is also simple, but the main chunk lies with it deemed to accrue or arise in India. That is where the meat is. That is where the whole problem, whole discussions lies. So for a non-resident, from a residency position, we move to a non-resident. For a non-resident, two type of incomes are taxable. Now, in this deemed to accrue or arise, there are again two categories where taxable in India, and in a transaction in India and transaction with India are taxable. So, you have fair number of lists where transaction in India, you have to be in India, a business connection in India, property in India, asset or source in India. This is one part. And a transaction by way of interest, royalty, and a transaction with India. So somewhere where you need not to be physically or even now digitally, as a digitally, lot of things are now moving in. So even digitally, you need to be present. That's category in, and the other category is with. So that is primary bifurcation. So this is where our act says that this would be taxable. Then you move to the beneficial provision, which says that section 90, how it will give you an idea. And why I'm explaining this, because this is of a relevance while we are filing returns also. So when we move towards what are the, we move from residency to the actual what income will be taxable at what for what kind of resident, then we move to the beneficial provision, because India has signed various double taxation avoidance agreement with various country, and therefore you need, as a sovereign state, you need to adhere, you need to agree to those kind of conditions, and therefore they have a beneficial provision which says both for scope and rate what are the beneficial, whichever is beneficial, act is beneficial or DTAA, whichever is beneficial, the assessee can take benefit of that. Okay, so you will decide. So at the end, what is the formula? What is the formula for income tax? Is income tax equals to residential status multiplied by whatever, it's not exactly multiplied, but you see your income multiplied by rate, and you see Income Tax Act or DTAA, whichever is the beneficial provision, you apply and you pay tax accordingly. For paying of such tax, you need to file the return. So after computing the income tax, return is required to be filed. So that's the background why why return filing is important and how does the income accrue. Okay, so from the residency provision to for what kind of residency people, what kind of income is taxable, to in that kind of income what rate will be multiplied, and then For resident Indian, resident Indians or resident company, this is fine. But for a non-resident, you also need to see the, or for a foreign income, you also need to see the DTAA, whichever is beneficial. So income tax is a summation where you see residential status, multiply by income, multiply by rate, and then you actually see a DTAA beneficial provision. So that's the spare, and then you go towards filing of the return, which is our main topic for today. I have a couple of questions. I'll just see. Okay, COVID, I'll take later. Convenience, give date. Okay, three questions are there. Maybe most of them are maybe answered later on. So I will just skip. So now we move towards return filing legal issues. So I just covered in 10 minutes what the basic periphery and how does it, for a non-resident what is taxation. And now we see, now we come into the main part of it, that was starters. Now we have entered into a main course. So what are the legal issues related to it? So all of us know that section 139 gives us mandatory filing of return. So which return, who needs to be filed, at what date, that section 139 mandates us. So requirement of filing of return, okay, which says section 139 of the Act, following person should be required to furnish return of income before the prescribed due date. Company or firm or any person other than a company or firm where total income of such person exceeds the basic exemption limit. So the important point is that company or firm, there is no, each foreign company or firm would be covered in this section. Okay, this basic exemption limit is only for people who are other than the foreign company and firm. So that is, any kind of exemption limit, whatever has been provided, okay, that is only for the other category and not for firm and company. Okay, now what happens? My question to you, my first question to you, and I would request you to answer on chat or mostly chat because Q&A is better reserved for queries. Would a company with, let's say, a foreign company which incurs a loss, is it still required to file a return? Foreign company which incurs a loss, is it still required to file a return? Very basic questions. Foreign company, just to keep you in the frame of things. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Govind, Kadam, Navaratan. Thank you, everyone. Pankaj. So yeah, they need to, and it is a specific section itself for it. So it says, provided also that every company or a firm shall furnish on or before the due date of its income or losses in every previous year. So yes, if income also includes losses as well. Sometimes people think, and I have seen many non-residents, having losses, and specifically individual do not filing the return. They somehow do not realize this. It's a practical point that you can carry forward those losses and those could be set off while your further incomes or gains. And therefore, when sometimes people have losses, then please tell them to file the return, okay? And because many people do not file, a loss hai, why do you need to file? I do not need to file. A, it is technically required. B, it is better for them, they can carry forward those losses. Now we move forward to our next poser, the first poser technically. So there is this foreign company in Netherlands. It has a wholly owned subsidiary in India. It sells its shares of Indian company, okay, to another Netherlands-based foreign company or any foreign company for that matter. Okay. Now this income is taxable in India as per Income Tax Act Section 911 because shares being capital asset is situated in India. Okay. So we have to first see the Income Tax Act. However, it is not taxable in India as per DTAA between India and Netherlands. So Article 13.5 of India and Netherlands Treaty says that in such kind of transaction, the income would not be taxable in India. Okay. Now, my question to you, and as you have rightly interacted, whether this foreign company is required to file return in India. I'll have a sip of my coffee while you answer whether this foreign company is required to file. This foreign company is required to file a return of required to file. This income is not taxable as per DTAA. This is taxable as per Act. Yes, to claim DTAA. So someone says no. Govindji says no. No. Arya Narayan says yes. So we have quite a number of yeses and quite a number, only couple of no's. Sanjay, Jyoti, everybody, yes, because people are saying, okay, to claim the TT benefit, at least you need to file the return. So how do you escape? So interestingly, most of us have thought yes, but the courts are divided. And we have covered few AARs where the courts are divided, not all, but few. And you will see even on the similar facts, the courts are divided. Let's see how. Similar kind of case. Okay. So a Netherlands-based company sold its Indian shares to another company. Okay. And VNU International, this is an AAR. Okay. Venenberg Group, 2007 AR, all New Delhi. Okay. Again, a Netherlands-based company sold shares of entire shareholder to Indian subsidiary company. Okay, to another Netherlands company. Similar facts. Okay, one has hold, they have to file a return. And another has hold, do not have to file the return. So we have both the AARs. Okay, and in both both giving a different view. What's the analogy behind this view that I have to file return? It says that what we learned that company, there is no expression for company as it exceeded the maximum amount which is not chargeable to tax. So once it is not there, you have to file it. Even for a DTAA claim, which couple of people also mentioned, you have to file it. Otherwise, how will people allow? How will the assessing officer know whether you have a rightful claim or not to access a DTAA, to make use of DTAA? So that's the analogy which says have to file return. Okay, and foreign companies covered within the definition under 217 of the Act. It says do not file return. It says that these are just machinery provisions. 139 is just machinery provisions and nothing else. Okay, these are just machinery provision. And when in section 4 and 5 the income is not taxable, why does the Indian government have a right to jurisdict over that? The Indian government does not have any right, okay, to tell the other person to file the return, because Act reads with DTAA. Fine, Act read with DTAA. There is no issue. They should not. It is not under their jurisdiction. So both kind of cases are there. Take as per your sweet will. So in this case, we had that income tax was leviable, but out of DTAA, they were out. Income tax, as per Indian Income Tax Act, the taxable table is there, but as per DTAA, it was out. What is your opinion when even as per Indian Income Tax Act, the amount is not taxable? What is the group's opinion? As per Indian Income Tax Act, even the amount is not taxable. What is the group opinion? Whether the return needs to be filed or not? Because it says there is no expression company exceed the maximum amount which is not chargeable to income tax. Let's say company has transacted in India, as per income tax only the amount is not taxable. Do they need to file return in India? So here Ryan says still yes, needs to be filed. Everyone needs to file. Some more comments. So M. Naratan says no jurisdiction. So Harsh, you will come to 115A a little later. But let's say it's not an 115A case. Let's assume. So this could be the difference. Okay. But yeah. So some people say no jurisdiction again. And again, courts are also thinking in the same manner. So there are a couple of cases. Dirain Company, 2011, 11taxman.com 388. It says Assisi is US-based entity who has sold entire shareholding without consideration to another Singapore company by way of restructuring. It says that under section 45 there is no taxability, 47(3) or whatever. There is no taxability over there. So when the shares are sold, there is no taxability. Still, you have to file return. Okay, applicant is bound to file return of income. The fact says no, it was a case of a royalty. It says you do not need to file a return of income. You're fine. It is not a royalty as per the IT Act. Okay, and you do not need to file return. So again, similar facts. Again, your sweet will, or maybe you may find a different fact pattern. Okay, and that's a different story. But this is again a big question mark whether it needs to be filed or not. Yes, 115A5 would come into picture, and we'll take them in next 10 minutes. Okay, so that's another thing. Similar, I will show you one more case. Okay. SmithKline Beecham Port Louis Limited, 2012, 24taxman.com, and Dow Agro Science Agriculture Product Limited. They were Mauritius company sold, prior to 2017, we know that Mauritius company sold selling shares in India. It was being taxable, in Mauritius, so this was not taxable. Both had similar case. The CCA Mauritius company sold the entire shareholding to another Singapore company. One AR says have to file return. Another says do not have to file return. There is no jurisdiction per se. No need. There is no taxability. Why are what's the need of even filing return? I am somehow of the opinion, and this opinion is personal, is that maybe it appears that they have to file the return because the transaction has happened in this country, and somehow if you need to take benefit, it is much better that you file this return. So, and I maybe substantiate my thinking. In 1922 Act, it says every person, whether resident or not resident, whose income exceeds the maximum amount exempt from tax. So this was categorically there in 1922 Act. So you could have escaped at that point of time. In 1922 Act, this was a categorically mention of these facts. Okay, but when they shifted to 1961 Act, firms and companies were specifically separated. Okay, so I have an opinion that these return needs to be filed. If you have some kind of transaction in this country, it is better to file the return and then rather than not filing it. Next slide, and it's a little maybe just to invoke a thought process. So equalization, everybody knows this is 2021 Act. Had this expanded the scope of equalization levy. Let's say this equalization levy, there is a foreign company e-commerce operator which is paying this EL 2%. All of us know it's a separate act. It's not included in Income Tax Act. Okay, and Section 1050 of the Income Tax Act specifically exempt that whatever you have taxed at EL, would not be. It is not taxable in India. It is not taxable as per the Indian Income Tax Act. If paid EL, it's fine. EL is there for a while till that this question remains valid. Now, this company earning only exempt income because it is specifically exempt under 1050. Okay, it was a taxable income, but specifically exempted by way of Section 10. Okay, it could be EL, it could be any other income. Do they need to file a return? Do they need to file the return? Let's see what we got there. So no, yes, no, yes. The no's who have started are still continuing with the no. But yeah, so that's a very peculiar situation because ELs somebody would free, okay, I'm paying this tax 2%, nothing doing in this country, but some of you still feel that they need to file this return. As I said, no consensus. The idea is to just invoke the thought process. In my opinion, when it is considered as a completely exempt itself in the act per se, and specifically by Section 10 and not by virtue of any other condition, you may not file the return. But for other purposes where we are taking, specific computational sections, okay, where we are with like say 45 or a computational section, you may have to file the return. So that's my opinion, but yeah, anybody's opinion could be factored in. So that's the basic idea of 139, and now we move towards 115 A5, which somebody mentioned a couple of minutes before. How it is going? Is the pace and the speed fine? Should I slow down a bit or maybe pace up a bit? Any just to know the reactions. 30 minutes down the line. Hey, fine. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. Let's keep interacting. I should know your names by end of the session. You may or may not understand the nuances. But I should know your names. That's the idea. Okay. So need to okay, ma'am. I'll slow down. Okay. So that's an idea. 139 mandates you. Okay. foreign companies, even if it's there, it's not a taxable income. They still mandate you, to file the return. Hyper technically speaking, yes, you need to. There have been AAR on both the sides. Now, there's a relief for filing of return, which is a special provision for non-residents. Okay, non-residents. Typically, if you read this chapter, it says relief for foreign companies. Okay, the chapter title is misleading. Okay, but it's a special provision for non-resident, which includes company and individuals as well. If you have any questions, please put it in a Q&A box. I'll try to take it maybe half an hour later, or maybe wherever the logical takes. So now, non-resident not required to file return in India. It's a specific section which gives you this relief. 115A5, it shall not be necessary for a non-resident or of a foreign company to furnish 139 if the total income consisted only income referred to clause A, and this clause B was later inducted in Finance Act 2020. Okay, so clause A was of dividend and interest, clause B is of royalty and fees for technical services. So only if your income are of these four nature: dividend, interest, royalty, and fees for technical service, and tax deductible at source has been deducted, and such rate of deduction is not less than the rate specified. So we would, in the next slide, I will explain you what was prior to 2020 and what was post Finance Act 2020, which will make this easy. But understand, first of all, these are only for four kind of income: dividend, interest, royalty, and fees for technical services. What was the amendment and what was the need of doing it? So earlier it was only clause A, which was only dividend and certain interest. Okay. And it says the tax deductible at source under the provision of chapter 17B has been deducted from such income. It just gave this. Now they've added two things over here, clause A and clause B, which was royalty and fees for technical services are being added. And they've also added one more condition. The rate as such deduction is not less than the rate specified under clause A, or as the case may be, clause B of subsection 1. Okay, they said rate of such deduction is not less than the rate specified under clause A, or as the case may be, clause B of the subsection 1. So they specifically said this. Okay. Now, a question to you to understand this: what was the changes? And let's say understand for dividend. Before amendment, dividend paid by income company, and we considering that dividend was taxable. I'm not going into that debate. The DDT was there and all that stuff. DDT and dividend was paid by the company. Let's understand the dividend was paid. Okay. As per the Act, the rate is, let's say, 20%. As per India, Australia, DDAA, the rate was 15%. Okay, as per the section 115A, the rate was 20%. As per India, Australia, DDAA, the rate was 15%. Okay, so what our earlier section said that it should be income which is included in clause A, which is dividend or interest. Fine. Rate should be as per 17B. Okay, and 17B leads you to rates in force, and rates in force leads you to Act or DDAA, whichever is lower. So you could have taken this benefit, okay, and says, okay, I am falling into dividend and interest. Dividend, the criteria income, first criteria. Second criteria, okay, 17B, I am falling. 17B gives me a rate of 15%, and therefore there would be, I'm fine. I could not, there is no requirement for filing of return. Okay. Now, what is your opinion? Will this position change? Will this position change after this 115A5? Do you think this position will change? Yes, to claim DDAA benefit, Harsh said yes. Would this position change? Now, what's the basic change which is happening? Why this position will change? Do you need to file return if you need to claim DDAA benefit, and why? Why? Why is important? Change the hoga. Since rate lower. Yes, perfect. Since rate. So if you go to this provision, okay, I'll just explain. So after amendment, because rate is not less than which is provided in clause A, they have specifically added that, and it's very, very important to understand this thing. Okay, they have specifically added that the rate of such deduction is not less than the rate specified. When it has been specifically added and rate specified is 20%, so you have to tick all the boxes. All is cumulative. So okay, income, dividend, interest was there, fine, as good as good. There's no issue. Tax deductible 17, fine. Okay, they have reduced the rate, but tax is not lower than the rate specified. So rate has been specified, and therefore the whole idea that would be discussed that for claiming the DTAA benefit, you need to file the return. Okay, and that is why this position come into picture. So that's the whole idea. Because of that, the whole position has changed, where for these kind of situation, for claiming the DT benefit, you need to file the return. If you're fine with deduction of 20%, it's no need to file return. So that's the whole idea. Okay. All of you clear on that? All of you clear, because that's the base of it. Okay, that's the base of it, and I hope that all of you are clear of that. If yes, then please give a yes or a thumbs up. Okay, I hope all of you are clear that. I will keep poking you to say yes, even though I know that you are there, so that I know you are there and you are attentive. Okay, so even a one yes will do for me. Okay, great. So that's the first thing. Now, second thing, transaction usage of software. And that is where I need to ask you, let's say usage of tax. We are done with the rate part. We are now the IT Act, let's say transaction is of usage of software. First condition is his total income on risk is assessable under the Act should be of clause A and clause B of this section. Okay. As per IT Act, okay, usage of computer software is royalty, and therefore you will fall under royalty. You will fall under clause A. You can take a benefit, but you are claiming DTAA benefit. Okay, and as per DTAA, the definition of royalty is not usage of computer software; it is usage of copyright. So your definition, your provision of this services, usage of software does not fall under royalty as per DTAA. Okay. Now, if you want to claim a DTAA benefit, okay, do you need to file the return? Whether the return needs to be filed? Yes or no? Yes. So it's an obvious yes, because you're changing the characteristics of the income. Once the characteristics, let's say it is not royalty, then any which way is 115A. You do not fall into that. So you do not need to see, I was, in the Act, I was there, and I was, completely unaware of that, and I was still royal. The counter argument could be that DTAA is derived from Section 92. Section 92 is part of Act, and therefore, when I say as per the IT Act, this is also there. But then it will lose its whole color of the royalty, and therefore, section 115A5 will not be applicable. So yes, you need to file a return. So what's the major impact of this amendment? What's the major impact of this amendment? Because this criteria is extended, it will still relief to a non-resident for case of royalty where the DTAA rate was already higher. So they used to file, they had to file this return because royalty was not prescribed in, it was not part of the clause A. Okay. Now, even if the rate is prescribed, the rate of royalty as per these DTAA, Australia, Belarus, Brazil, Bulgaria, and all those are higher. So they do not need to take treaty benefit. If they do not need to take treaty benefit, now they would not required to file return of income in India, because this 115A5 specifically allows them to. Okay. Specific also in case of fees for technical services, these all countries, Belarus, Bulgaria, Denmark, Jordan, they have a higher rate than our rate of 10%. Okay, so currently what is our rate of 115A is 10%, both for royalty and for fees for technical services, majorly. Okay, so when that 10%, their own DDAA rate is higher, these countries, assessee from these countries would really benefit. Also, if somebody don't want to make available benefit, then also these countries, Australia, Canada, UK, they will also benefit. But the major hit is with respect to dividend and interest. And biggest hit is on dividend, because dividend was not taxable till now. It was paid by the company, and now you have so many non-resident who have received dividend income. Tax has been deducted on that. Okay, some bigger ones have given declaration to the companies that reduce. I want to take the treaty benefit, and therefore they have given TRC for that effect, and therefore company has deducted lesser tax. All of them would fall under this ambit. And this dividend, we have got numerous inquiries now for non-resident, to file this, dividend return, because earlier that was not there. Now significantly that proportion has increased. So dividend was the major hit to give a relief of royalty and fees for technical services. The whole scheme was redesigned, but because that specific clause was added, the rate should not be lower. And what's the dividend rate? 20%. So 20%, and in many of the treaties, when you will file 10%, even 5% when you take the benefit of MFN clauses. Okay, 5% rate is there, 10% rate is there. So major I would say disturbances on those kind of clients who are earning this dividend income. So just to summarize, 115A before amendment, it covered dividend interest, definition of income, and now this rate not less than provided in clause A and clause B is being covered. So that's the whole gambit of it. Choose carefully, be very practical with your client, and be apprise them of the situation that these changes are there. And I'm very sure that many returns will pop up because of that. Next is another relief which is given to non-resident Indian. So it is specifically given to non-resident Indian for some certain cases. That's the whole idea, and we'll spend a good amount of time, maybe next 20 minutes on that. Okay, and few closer, and I will request, as you've done already a lot of participation, I would request your participation on it. Okay, so what does section 115G says? We have three interesting posers for this. It shall not be necessary for a non-resident Indian. This is not for companies. This is not for any foreign individual. This is for non-resident Indian to furnish under subsection 1 of section 139 a return of income if his total income is of investment income or by way of long-term capital gains or both. So either it has to be an investment income or it would be by way of long-term capital gains or both. And the tax deductible at source under the provision of chapter 17B has been deducted. Remember 115A5, a new condition was being added that rate should not be lower. Over here, currently it is 17B chapter only. So when it is there, 17B chapter only, you could take treaty benefits also. So 115-17B leads you to 195, 195 leads you to rates in force leads you to treaty or act, whichever is beneficial, and therefore tax deductible under the provision of chapter 17 has been deducted from such income. Okay, so it's investment income or LTCG, and conditions are cumulative. Now be ready for the posers, and I request your participation with reasoning, with your thought process. Okay, whether this Mr. Peter, whom this poser is based, okay, would be Kadam Usha says, will it apply to non-resident who taking foreign citizenship? No, ma'am, it will not apply. It will not apply who taking a foreign citizenship. And I have seen, I think 3-4 questions are there. Maybe after this section, I will take them also. So, Mr. Peter, was a NRI. This fact is there. Purchased share on 1/4/17 from NRO account and sold shares on 1/4/2021. Okay, so he's purchased share and sold shares on 1/4/2021. It's obviously a long-term gain. Whether he would require to file return or not. My question to you is whether he would be required to file return or not. Yes, no, reasoning. Let's participate. Let's be interactive. I see if in Q&A if there are any issues. I am seeing a couple of. So yes, is Sushil says yes. Yes, will they have to file it or not file it? Has investment income been defined? Interesting question. Please put your questions and know if TDS has been. So Sanjay says no need to file it if TDS has been deducted. So Bhuvneshwari says no. Kadam says no, they don't have to. Wow. Yes and no's coming. Very nice. Interactive. More couple of more. Let's put up. Because see, if I just speak, you will not remember. But if you participate, if you answer, and if you get yes, you may also not remember. But if you get no, if your answer is not correct, you will definitely remember it. That's the whole exercise. That's the whole why we've created posers. No, if invested in foreign currency. Yeah, it's a perfect answer. So conditions are there. I specifically did not mention it so that if I just relay the information to you, you will not remember it. I have to give it back step by step. So the whole idea, how the investment income or how what is the benefit for? It says long-term capital gains means income chargeable under the Act capital gain relating to a capital asset being a foreign exchange asset, which is not a short-term capital asset. So it has to be a foreign exchange asset. It is not like normal investment income, anything, NRO account, anything, purchase it from Indian currency. The whole idea is that to increase the inflow of this foreign currency in India. And those were the days where foreign currency was very limited. To give them this benefit, the whole idea was to do the foreign exchange asset. Okay. And so that it should not be a short term, it should be long term, so that they are invested for a long period of time. When we were really in crunch of foreign currency. Now our foreign currency reserves are blooming. Okay. So foreign exchange asset. Now, what does this foreign exchange asset mean? Means any specified assets which the assessee has acquired or purchased with or subscribed to in convertible foreign exchange. Remember, convertible foreign exchange. Okay. So now this leads to another definition. Convertible foreign exchange means foreign exchange which is for the time being treated by Reserve Bank of India for the purpose of foreign. It has to be convertible foreign exchange. And if you go to FEMA, it says freely convertible foreign exchange. Not every currency in this world is freely convertible. So you need to see whether it's a convertible foreign exchange or not. If and only if it is a convertible foreign exchange as per that definition, then the benefit would be available. Good. So all the yes and no's, only if you participate, all of us will learn. And I'll also, get to know new ideas. Okay. Next poser. Same Mr. Peter, 1/4/2017. Now he's used convertible foreign exchange. This fact is now clear because you now know it. So this convertible foreign exchange he has used. Bonus shares were received on 1/4/2019, sold on 1/4/2021. So he received bonus share. Out of the convertible foreign exchange, he got some bonus shares. He got some shares. He was issued bonus shares. Okay, and then it was sold on 1/4/2021. Obviously, this is long term. Whether return needs to be filed or not. Whether a return needs to be filed or not. To put it very simply, whether this bonus share would be considered as acquired from foreign convertible exchange or not. मैंने आपको हिंट दे दिया, ठीक है? That's the hint for you. So Bhuvneshwari says no, Harsh says yes, not required to file. See, interesting. When you have yes and no's, that's the fun of it, man. Okay, because then you think, question sahi hai, because yes and no's are in. Okay. So Padam Ucha says not required to file. Harsh says yes. So we have 3 no and 1 yes. Okay. No, not required to file, not required to file. as a result of foreign exchange transaction. Pankaj says like that. Bonus is offshoot of original, which was through convertible foreign exchange. Interesting, interesting. Yes. So many people thought that the same manner. Bonus is just an offshoot. Okay. What whatever categorization you have done from the original sum invested, the same categorization should be done from offshoot also. Okay. So Karnik says not required to be filed. Interesting, Karnik, my friend. Good to see you here. So yes and no's are there, but there is a case law on that. Okay, and which says that this is an expression, and I'll take you the provision too. It's sorry, provision I mentioned. It says attributable. Okay, so the word mention is it is attributable to convertible foreign exchange. Okay, it is not. These bonus shares are not directly attributed to foreign exchange, and when there are not directly attributable to foreign exchange, you would not get the same benefit. The whole emphasis was bring foreign exchange in India. Okay, by way of bonus shares, you have not bought this, I would say, foreign exchange in India. And therefore, for these bonus shares, you will not get this relief. You need to file the return. The return needs to be filed. And one more case law, which we found was not exactly on bonus share, but interest on interest redeposited with the original sum. So all the citations and everything is there. I am not repeating them. You can, the slide would be shared. You can just take it, from there. So interest on interest redeposited with original sum. The benefit was not given over there. Okay, because it said word expression. If it would have been written derived from, maybe it will encompass a bigger thing. It's a derived from, but it said attributable. Attributable is a narrower thing, and therefore, when you say attributable, you have to categorically see that amount, that particular transaction, and therefore the return needs to be filed. Benefit cannot be given on that. So that's the whole idea of this case. Again, all is litigation, because when you say yes and no, it's litigative. Try your luck. Okay, next poser. Again, Mr. Peter. He purchased for shares on 1/5/2020 in foreign currency, sold shares on 1/2/21. Okay. Whether return filing is required. Okay. Whether return filing is required. Harsh says yes. Harsh it seems to be giving all right answers. Thank you, Harsh. You're of a good help. So Jyoti says yes because it's short term. Bhuvneshwari says, all of us says yes, short term, Yeah, because it's not long term. Ravindra says like that, it's not long term. So obviously it's very categorically, ye kaun sa question hai? Okay, what kind of question is this? So this is a trick question, Mitro. Okay, and the trick question is like that, and it has been argued well. Okay, it says, okay, you are writing long-term capital gain, but whether this income is not an investment income, can short-term capital gains be not considered as investment income? Why not? It is my investment income. I invested, I earned income out of it, I sold it up. And why do I need to go to long-term capital gains? This is my investment income. I am fine. I'm selling it over here, and therefore you give me this benefit. Okay. So this is the foregoing thing that TDS has been deducted. I'm not going into that. Okay. TDS has been rightly deducted. But and now I again ask you the question, can this short-term capital gain be considered as investment income? Okay. And therefore, can you take this benefit out of this jugglery of words? Okay. That is investment income, short-term capital gain, you can take the benefit out of this. What says? So Karthik says, yes, you can take it, and therefore no need to file return. Interesting. Now people are thinking, "Arey, haan yaar, ye bhi to ho sakta hai. This is investment income only." Okay, means any income derived. Okay, what do you say? Couple of more things. So interestingly, we have cases on both the side. Okay, I was of the earlier opinion that short-term capital gains you cannot take it. Okay, but when I researched more, I found one case which is of beneficial to SSE. Okay, first the negative case. It says, and this does not, this case, CIT would say Shyam L. Chelaram, it does not specifically answers this question, but it adds, it in a para, it adds that, there is some reasoning why long-term capital gain is added, and you need to adhere to it. These words are not added just because मतलब ही क्या था, investment income लिख के छोड़ देते. They could have just left on an investment income thing. Why they added long-term capital gains? Okay, so there was a particular reason why they added long-term capital gains, because they wanted this inflow in this country and need to see the intention. And you cannot, this is a clear indication that Parliament is the benefit to only long-term capital gains and investment income. Okay, and the ground of reasoning is such, and which was till date my thought process also, that investment income is something you earn from that investment, but the investment should be there. Gains is when you sell shares or buy shares. So investment income is like kind of a passive income where you derive income. It could be interest, it could be dividend. Investment has to be there. Okay, and gains are sell or loss, and therefore the gain itself is not part of investment income. Okay, so this was my theory till date, and still I maintain that, but I've found another case law, and which says that investment short-term capital, this is Srimati Trishla Jain's the Delhi case, okay, says short-term gains fall under definition of income as per the act, and therefore and hence would be covered under definition of investment income. It says since the language is ambiguous and the short-term capital gain found in a definition, we would give you this benefit. I somehow don't subscribe to this thing with due respect to the tribunal. Okay, this is another case, Sundardas Haridas. The previous case did not cover exactly this reasoning, but Sundardas Haridas covers that investment income does not cover short-term capital gain. It cannot be covered under phase, and if the benefit would have provided, that would have been specified in the act as it is done in other sections. So now, how many of your opinion, people who are of the opinion that short-term capital gains are part of investment income, people who are of the opinion that short-term capital gains are part of investment income, can write one. Let's see how many one are there. Yes, short-term capital gain. Who can take this aggressive approach? Short-term capital gains is part of investment income. You can write one in the chat box. And other can write two. Who believe that, who are some, I am more of a conservative approach. I would say, nahi, this could not be taken. So we have one on either side. We have now 2:1. We have now 2:2. Interesting. Also, I don't know who will win. This bench of tribunal members is too large to see. So, but yeah, I think most of you are falling into two. So the people who believe that short-term capital gains would not be included is, have won this at least public vote. Okay. So just a second. The slide is not moving. So just to paraphrase it again, you have to go step one by one. NRI definitions are given. They have to invest only in specified assets, not all. Okay, only specified asset. The investment has to be convertible foreign exchange. Okay, as per FEMA. Then the belief which I told I had, you bifurcate into investment income and gain and loss. If it is investment income, you can take that relief. If it is LTCG, you take the relief. If it is STCG, you don't. Okay, so that's the ideology which I still adhere to. Okay, but yes, you have ones and twos both. You have on the both. So you can take a couple of more judgment. We are already at 7. So a couple of more judgment, which says original source is important. Not from one transfer to another bank transfer will not matter. The original source was a foreign investment. The intention was there, so you can take. Then non-resident has to be at the time of sale. That is important. ऐसा नहीं है you were purchased at that point of time and then you come to India and then you were a non-resident. So ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. At the time of residency you were, at the time of selling of share, you were a resident. So that should not be there. So maybe you can refer to these cases later. 1 hour done. So how's the Josh? Is everybody fine, alive over here? Is the pace and the session going fine? I'll have a glass of water. I also request you to keep your eyes off for 10 seconds so that but just wanted to check or do a health checkup for all. Everyone fine? Josh is high. Great. So I think we are more or less on time. Maybe 5-10 minutes here and there. I will not hold you back. Okay. So let's begin the next hour of it. Okay. So now we have more or less understood basically 139 what it prescribes, then 115 A5 what reliefs does it give, then 115 G what reliefs does it gives. Okay, and then we now move to there are various other compliances, audit needs to be done or not done, whatever be it, all those compliances will cover now. Okay, because that's also before filing the return you need to get the audit and transfer pricing audit. So let's see who's the rate. This is a foreign company who doesn't have a PE in India. Okay, it has a payment for service provided. Okay, it receives a payment for service provider. There could be a couple of cases, or maybe it does not matter. That we'll find out. Income is not taxable as per IT Act. The similar thing, and that is why I took the background first, because IT Act, and some of you may not be well versed with IT Act and DDAA. Case 2 income is taxable as per, not taxable as per, taxable as per Act, but not taxable as per DDAA in India. So the relief has been taken. Okay, this company and the threshold limit for tax audit exclusion. So this company is providing services or goods, whatever, and it is more than 1 crore turnover or 10 crore or whatever it is there. Is this foreign entity required to file tax audit in India? Okay, whether this foreign company it does not have a P in India, it's just providing services, okay, or let's say goods, whatever be it. Whether this foreign company, yes, the transaction is happening in India, they are selling in India. Whether these company would require to carry on a tax audit in India, very fairly, yes or no? No, not required to maintain books of account. So how do you do an audit? Okay, not required to maintain books of account. So how do you do an audit? No, Jyoti says no, very nice. Yeah, so most of what would feel like that. Why no? But when I read a tax audit section, okay, so resident SSC liable to tax audit. Let's find out whether what Iyer Narayan says, resident SSC. It says every person carrying on business. It doesn't say business in India. Every person carrying on business shall, if his total sales turnover positive, in business exceed or exceeded 1 crore rupees in the previous year. Business include any trade commerce, person includes a company, and we have already know till now, company includes foreign company, or a firm include outside, whatever. Let's stick to company. Company includes foreign company. Now, would you not fall under this criteria? You are a person carrying on a business, you're selling in India. Okay, you may not have a permanent establishment in India. Okay, maybe your income is taxable, but you are getting out of DDAA route. Okay, would you not be liable for a tax audit? Yes or no? After reading this situation, which simply says every person carrying on business. It doesn't say resident. Okay, it doesn't say is carrying on business in India. Okay, it says just total sales and you're somehow connected, as we understood for return. Okay, because he is connected to India, he needs to file that return. So Nahita says no, not required. Why not required? I'm just posing a question. I'm just giving you open acts. I'm just giving you an idea why it is not required. Every person, business, person. As simple as that. I am calling it technical. Why not? And you may say, "Hey, now everyone under the sun would have to file tax audits in India." So yeah, if you read it in this manner, okay, see section 1 which state Act applies to whole of India. So why does then people need to file return? Why do then people need to file return? Section 1 says that jurisdiction is in India. Fine. Then why do those people needs to be filed? We just now, 10 minutes before, decided that some people need to file return. Even the foreign company needs to file return. They are earning taxable income out of India. Okay, they are getting. I am putting they are earning taxable income out of India, but only because of the DDAA provision, they are left out. They do not have to pay tax in India. So whether they do not need to, why would they come? They are carrying on business in India as per the Income Tax Act. Only because you're taking a treaty benefit, you're coming out of this. But the treaty benefit does not apply to this kind of machinery provision. 44AB tax audit, you need to get it done. Why not? Section 90 has non-obstante clause and subclause 2 states that beneficial provision will apply. Yeah, perfect. See, section 90 and 92, whatever 92 says, it is for double taxation avoidance. It is not for any other matter. They cannot direct the sovereign country what what forms you need to file. They cannot direct what audit you need to conduct. It is just for the purpose of double taxation avoidance agreement and nothing else. They just see any DDAA just divides the right of taxation between the source country and resident. It does nothing else. It would hit credit so that taxation is not doubly, the income is not doubly taxed. But why not tax audit? So these questions have come in front of courts also. Okay. And more or less, the answer is it is not derived per se as per the actual letter of the law, but it says that when that business, the books of account don't need to be maintained, let's say there are the itself the expense is not required to be seen. What would you audit for? What would you do for tax audit for? Okay, so there are a couple of cases. It says okay, and we have some issues with the pointer. So ITO versus Walls Alpine in, I don't know how to pronounce it. Okay, 1998. It says that according to provision, the main contention or title of session is every person. Okay. But in the instance case, company does not have maintained, and the main contention is the SSC carried on business in India as not Google department. It has written, but I do not see where the act says business in India. But that has been the normal provision that until unless you have some kind of expenses to get deducted, okay, until unless, because tax kahan pe, tax audit kya karoge aap? Basically you would see expenses, you would see whether that income has been correctly monitored or not. And when you have a P, obviously you do a audit. When you have other, when you have some presence, you would that audit. Okay, same tax audit you have SNAM Progati SPA versus JCIT. Okay, it was a 44D. So in 44D now, which is 44DA, okay, another section 44DA now more prevalent. There was a 20% tax where no expenses needs to be justified. When no expenses needs to be justified, what would you audit for? You will just on a turnover basis, you will pay tax. So as simple as that. But now, these are old cases. Now I'll present you one example why this will become more prominent. Because earlier for doing, 44 section is into business income. Earlier for doing business in India, you had to be physically present in India, and then your PE was established, or you could export and everything was there, and the tax department was not considered. The tax department was not at all concerned because no income tax is payable when somebody is selling from outside India. Okay, but now because of the digital presence thing, whole scenario is changing, and which is presented on in next poster. Most of you must be aware of SEP, significant economic presence. Okay, so you have a significant economic presence when you have a transaction of goods or service property. Any person is selling out of from outside India, in India of more than 2 crore, or have a user in India of more than 3 lakhs. Okay, and if you have a sale of data or sale of goods or services, and on this transaction also, you you have a SEP in India. Okay, and when you have a SEP in India, you have a business connection in India. You have a business connection in India, then you become you have a business connection in India, and therefore you might be liable for all those returns and audits. Only because of treaty benefits, you are getting saved. Only because of the treaty benefits, you are getting saved. Otherwise, if let's say in some country TT is not available, then what would you do? You would still consider, you will get into SEP. Because of that SEP, a permanent a business connection as per section 911 will be formed in India. When you have a business connection, you might get into tax audit. And such crazy thing this is, okay, till it is withdrawn or till we get this pillar 1, pillar 2 consensus and everything, you know. There may be position that number of users in India is 3 lakh. This Amazon.com, it is a e-commerce operator. It is selling user data to USA, and nowhere India is involved except what is data. This data is considered as an asset in India. Okay, nowhere they are involved. Okay, and still they have a SEP in India. They have a business function in India. Therefore, all those rules and regulations need to be followed. They need to deduct TDS, they need to do the tax audit. Those could come into picture because we are, you know, now moving from a physically in India to a digitally in. Okay, and therefore be very, you know, this practicality may situation may change. Sorry, I pushed that question. Okay, so this is about the tax audit. You know, this could be a possibility that such kind of situations may arise. Now, requirement of a transfer pricing compliance, transfer pricing audits. Okay, so again, an Indian company, foreign company, now they are an associate enterprise. Just a change in modification, they are an associate enterprise. This Indian company has filed a 3CEB. This Indian company has filed a 3CEB. Okay. Again, the same case, income is taxable, not one, but I don't know whether this will matter or not. Whether this foreign entity is required to file Form 3CEB in India. Your Indian company has filed. On the one side, it has proven that 3CEB, you know, I am at arm's length. Okay. But whether this foreign company who is providing the services, okay, whether they also need to file this 3CEB in India or not. Yes or no? Govind says yes. Ravindra says yes. Okay. So many yeses on transfer pricing audit, but none of them for tax audit. As a impartial treatment. Why for transfer pricing, the similar status, you're getting a transfer pricing audit done, and for tax audit, you are saying no. Why? Why? I'm not asking Govind, Ravindra, Avinish, Harsh. You have to report why. Why you have to report internal? Why not tax audit? Okay. Said tax audit nahi hoga. So why transfer pricing then? Why transfer pricing? Why special treatment to transfer pricing? It looks more glamorous, maybe. Okay. Anybody has an idea why tax audit? No, not why most people were saying no for tax audit, but most of you are saying for transfer pricing. I'll just rush through a bit. Okay. Yeah, now short of time. So transfer pricing compliance, when I read the section, it says every person who has entered into an international transaction shall obtain a report. Okay. Now this every person includes again a company, firm. Okay. And when this every person includes company or a firm, whatever be it, the flip entity, the other entity also required to file 3CEB. Other entity also needs to maintain documentation and everything. Okay. So yes, you know, because it does not bifurcate requirement to resident and non-resident. Okay. So Usha says maybe due to definition of international transaction. Yes, but the same definition every person is there with tax audit also. Examine करना घर जाके मैं भी देखूंगा ऑफिस, ठीक है? Same company is with same thing is with tax audit also. But tax transfer pricing, more people are akin to it. More people are saying yes. Okay, because that has been, as I said, be like PK. Okay, he doesn't know anything. वो कुछ नहीं पढ़कर आया. Again, he's just applying his mind and getting it done. So be like PK. Okay. So, you know, so this compliance is as per the act. When I read, okay, I believe yes, it needs to be done. Okay, and yeah, it needs to be done. And many people do not do it. Okay, many people do not do it. And there are various AAR regarding this, and all in favorable of assessee. Okay, and we've covered this AAR before also while return filing. So DRA company, it says return filing is yes, but transfer pricing is not required. Okay, but it was not taxable to India. There was no taxability arising out of Act. Why? What would you do? What would you, when there is no transfer, no taxability, what would you do arm's length for? Okay. Similarly, VNU International, it says return filing, yes, but transfer pricing is not there because purchase and sale between non-resident company. There are not one residency involved. But let's say where that one resident and other person involved then. So most of these are between a non-resident to a non-resident thing. Those all AR, okay. But when a resident is involved, I am of the firm opinion, the key, transfer pricing would be applicable. Tell their clients, if there is specifically taxable income, tell them, because all this activity, and it's a funny thing, arm's length, those who are doing transfer pricing would know, arm's length for a assessee is arm's length or better. So for Indian assessee, you say, oh, I have done better, very nice, I have earned 10%, I have earned 20% margin. But similar thing would be bad for the foreign company. And how do you justify that? Transfer pricing is an art, anything could be justified. So taxability was not AR. In case taxability is not arisen, AR in favor of applicant. But yes, in case income is liable to tax, that legally no relaxation has been there for transition between two, a resident and a non-resident. There is no as such relaxation. So most of the people do not do that. Many people are not aware of it. Okay, and that was the whole part of at least make your clients aware that this is the penalties and these are the issues for not filing the transfer pricing compliance. Okay. Let's go ahead. Sorry, okay. Now, nothing can, I would say, session could be completed without COVID. Okay, without impact of COVID. Okay, and so what? And these are some, while filing ITR, whether TP applicable, the answer should be while filing ITR, whether applicable, the answer should be no. Kindly confirm. Thanks. So in case the TP is applicability, yes, you have to do it. Okay. In case which I believe that there are taxable transactions needs to be done, therefore the answer yes. But if you say no, that this is not applicability, these are a transaction which transfer pricing not apply. Yes, you will obviously say no. So that would be there. So COVID impact. COVID impact was a lot of there, and lot of people who are from Gulf countries and many other countries, were stuck in India. I'm very sure most of you would have clients who would have come to you. We do not, we have to pay so much tax. We are from various, and there was circular issued 11/220 and 2/2021. This 2/2021 is itself a referencer in Income Tax Act and a DTAA how to read this up. So all those things were there, and all of us know, so I'm not stating the fact too much. All of us know that people were stranded here. They were not able to move out of India, and therefore, while filing this sale return, what stand we could take? Okay, one stand is simple: pay tax. Okay, see what is tax? Philosophically speaking, tax is the charge you pay to stay in a particular country and enjoying its resources, police, defense, infrastructure, everything. When you have stayed in India, okay, you obviously utilizes its resources, and therefore you should be liable to pay tax in India. But the problem is that even the foreign source income is taxable, and there are many countries where income is not taxable. Those people suddenly paying tax in India would make a hell lot of difference. Okay, would really make a hell lot of difference. So therefore all these issues, and therefore people have come up, we are earning that much, but so much of the income is there. We are from Gulf countries, no tax credit, government is given take tax credit, everything. So there could be various options. We have highlighted some of them. Kya options aap le sakte ho, and inform client about the issues of each option. Option one is Suresh Nanda case, the very famous case. This Mr. Suresh Nanda, his passport was impounded, he was behind the bars, he claimed, I was not able to move out of the country, and therefore I should not be the tax resident of the country. My question to you is, can you use this analogy in COVID cases? Can you use this analogy in COVID cases? Can you use this analogy? Say, मैं नहीं जा सकता था. I was not. Can you use that this Suresh Nanda case in your case? And High Court categorically said that it cannot be treated as a thumb of rule at each period of involuntary stay. So it needs to be seen from various perspectives. But my question to you is, can you claim this Suresh Nanda benefit? Would it be beyond control of SSC? So, आप जाते कैसे भी जाते, you could have gone to other country, you could have swam and went to other country. Were you being now the interesting question, most of the people will say, yeah, we can take this benefit, we should reduce number of days and write it up. But remember one thing, first your passport has been tracked. Those number may be matched by the income tax. So if you reduce the number of days and say I was non-resident, you could be in a trouble, because now in the income tax form everything is e-filing. There is no space to actually say I am taking this position because of these things. Either you write a letter to ITO later on, how whom to write letter, who will take that letter, grievance में लिखोगे, faceless में किसको लिखोगे. Okay, so it's a little difficult thing. Okay, but once you reduce your number of days of stay and you say no, I was non-resident, okay, PMB, you end up into misrepresentation of things. So it's a very, very risky position. All of them are risky, obviously, but this is one of the options. Second option is file a PIL. There was a PIL by Mr. Gaurav Bail. It was stuck. It was says that we would not entertain such petition until you were completely powerless and confined. You could have gone somewhere else, you could have traveled somewhere else, you could go via. Okay. Even when it was extended for 91 days, nothing was open. Still, that thing was, basically that was not entertained by the Honorable Supreme Court. PIL, again, if your client has so much at stake, you may go for a PIL. However, I'm not sure what would be the case for it. So this is one second option. Third option which will be explained is a tiebreaker rule. So I'll just explain in a minute what is a tiebreaker rule. So most of you would be aware of. Tiebreaker rule is when the person, let's say this Priyanka Chopra, is a resident of both the country, India and America, okay, USA. So both the places she is the resident. Now, how to break that tie? From which country she is the resident? So generally, again, DTAAs are not rule of thumb. You have to check it each DTAA. Generally, it flows. You see where the permanent home is. So for Priyanka Chopra, permanent home at both places. She might live in Bombay, she might live in US also. Then center of vital interest, where are your workspace, what are you working on, all this you need to check. Again, Priyanka Chopra works in Bollywood less, Hollywood also. Okay, so center of vital interest is there. Habitual abode, where do you normally live? So Priyanka Chopra also many times come to India and stays with her parents. She also she stays in US, so that is habitual abode. So nationality. So wherever these factors kick in, we need to check it one by one, okay, or depending on the DTAA, the way they are worded, and then find out. And if you do not enter it, there is a map to it. And even MLI nowadays, you have to go to a map situation. You have to mutual agreement. People will sit, competent authorities, and they will decide which residentship you hold, which you are a tax resident of which country for the purpose of tax. Okay, so that's the whole chain of events which would happen. So now you would say, okay, I am fine, 182 days I was stayed in India or more, but I am tax resident of another country. My habitual abode, my center of vital interest, all my work, everything is there. So I was resident over there. Okay. But the interesting thing is how to report that in a return. That is what we are debating on, return nuances. Okay. How to report that? Because to opt for a tiebreaker itself is a pain thing. Okay, because there is no provision for ITR which says you are a tax treaty non-resident. You are a resident as per Act, you are a non-resident as per Act, but not a tax treaty non-resident. So again, you might have to reduce the number of days and write down and take all that thing. It's a difficult thing. Next problem is there might not be any tie to break only. There's a Dubai. For a USA, once you are a citizen, you are always a US tax resident. So there is a tiebreaker situation. When you are a citizen of USA, you are always a US tax resident, and you may stay in India 365 days. There's always a tie to break. Okay, but for UAE, it's number of days. So you have spent 180 days in India. You have spent less than 180 days outside India or in UAE. So you might not be tax resident of that country for the DDAA, for the purpose of DDAA. And therefore, there is no tie to break. Okay. So it's a very, very peculiar situation. So this is another option you could try depending on the country you're having, depending on the ties, the center of vital interest. This is one option, but again, difficult to report. And this is a normal thing. Pre-COVID also, this was difficult to report. How do you write this up? Okay, how do you write this up? So yeah, calendar and financial year will not matter. We have to report for financial year in. Then next. Option 4, file करो resident में, but foreign income ignore कर दो. Ignore foreign income. This is the risky one. Okay, you can't ignore because you could be in a Black Money Act everywhere. You did not report it up. You assume that it's fine. So it could, misrepresentation of fact, again a big misrepresentation. You would have black money and potential loss. So I would not request any one of you to take this option, but just to give you an option, just to give you an idea. Okay, split residency concept. Okay, I'm not sure that has been recognized in India as a split residency. Okay, and therefore it will be very difficult because for India, in a calendar year, you are a resident for whole. So I'm not very sure. Maybe we need to dwell upon this more. कुछ नहीं है, so obviously कुछ end में तो क्या है, pay tax. Okay, what else you can do. So that is there. So yeah, there is a case law for it. Maybe Smita ji, we can dwell upon this later. Split residency, this could be tried upon. I think it's a recent one also. So that is something which could be tried upon. But these are the options. There could be many more. Okay. Then recent amendment residential status. This I will do a bit faster. You know that they were 2021. Should we then disclose all income in US and claim relief under clause 4 of DTAA? Clause 4 is a residential concept. The India US, whatever credit mechanism, that will give you credit. Okay, so that is very, very important. That is very important. If that is there, so for US or a company which is having a higher tax rate, this will not affect that much because you file return over there, claim credit over there. That's not an issue. Problem वहाँ है कि जहाँ country में tax नहीं है और a very lower tax rate. Therefore, all you pay extra in India, everything will go down the drain. Okay. Any Indian tax law deliberating on a tiebreaker test, at least I am not aware, sir. I am not aware if such kind of deliberation is there. Okay. Residential status for individual, this all of you are aware that recently it got changed. When we read it for the first time, we believe, अच्छा क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? There is only one from a non-resident to resident, but not ordinary resident. We're just shifting one income. But then we dwelled further. There are a lot of changes. From NR to R, when you become, you lose a lot of concessions. What we learn, 115G and 115A5, those all concession we lose. So you can dwell upon these slide later on. Okay. Miscellaneous. One important thing which I want to discuss is that many times it happens when the payer, somebody who is actually remitting money, somebody who's there, deducts higher TDS. Most NRIs thinks, "Acha, ye tax ho gaya, khatam." Payer's liability could be different, and a receiver responsibility of computation of income is different. I want to bring up home upon this point. These are two entirely different things. Withholding of tax, you could be more conservative and withhold higher tax. But you could say, no, I don't believe in that. You may withhold, that's fine. I would claim that credit. Okay, I would get that refund. So ऐसा नहीं है जो tax काट लिया, you also analyze your position and you can help really your clients by telling, see, this is the position, we are very confident on this, why not file refund for refund? And there are many cases where while deduction of TDS, DTA relief is not available. 194E, 194LB, LC, LD, A and C. So these are some of them. Where while deducting TDS, you don't see DTAA benefit. Okay, so when you don't see DTAA benefit, you might end up deduction of higher taxes. Also, in many cases, buyer would want to be safe. I will deduct TDS, तुमको जो करना है कर लो. Okay, so your seller, your assessee, the non-resident, can take your opinion and you can file, for low taxes as well, and you could get refund as well. So let's be very clear on this, that payer's liability and a receiver responsibility is entirely different, and tax could be entirely different, and you can save your client tax with just filing of return, and you would tell them regarding that. Okay. What is your view to show resident or non-resident? I would say show resident, pay full tax, aram karo. Government has information on you more than you have your own information. Don't, pay tax, be free. That is what we advise to our client, whoever listen to us, otherwise, because see, as I said, philosophically, you've stayed in India, you've utilized the resources. Okay. You could have gone to any other country, you utilize the resources. Please, this won't be an unpopular opinion, but I would believe pay tax. Okay. Until unless, this one of the case where the person was in COVID, not in 3-4 months, he was completely not able to move. One of our client, hit by some accident, and he was there bedridden for more than 6 months, 7 months. We have taken an opinion on that matter that yes, you can take that relief, and that's a general relief as well. So that's a different story altogether. Okay, but in normal cases, you've stayed in India, utilizes the resource, khana pina khaya yahan ka, namak ka कर्ज तो अदा करना ही पड़ेगा. You have to pay tax. Okay. NRI advance tax, it's okay, nothing. New provision. There's recently, 11th October 2021, and this is where the whole story started of taking this session. Okay. An NRI or foreign company who are only in specified fund like AIF, category 3 AIF, all those are there. You could take this benefit out of this. So this is, I have written in the slides, not too much to be discussed. Okay, this is more of IFSC and all those kind of things. Maybe you can refer to the slide. 7th provision to section 139(1). This was, I think, somewhere added in 2019 or 20. I don't remember exactly. This is an interesting one. So even if you do not fall, under that person referred to in clause B, who are other than firm and company, okay, and you have all these expenses, 1 crore se upar ki aapne deposit karayi FD, you've incurred an expenditure of 2 lakh more of travel, okay, or 1 lakh rupees of consumption of electricity, you need to fill this, and this is applicable to non-resident as well. Now, non-resident coming in India may not be, maybe having only exempt income, but paying electricity bill of 1 lakh or more, or pay for his or any other person travel, 2 lakh rupees, okay, 2 lakh rupees hote kitne travel ke liye, okay, for a traveler in a foreign country, okay, he needs to file the return. So when you're checking for a client and he's asking your exempt income, I may not file return, what's the need of it? You need to check on these issues as well, because many people are having an NRE deposit in India. That's a completely exempt income. They do not file return in India. Okay, ऐसे अरे exempt income में क्या फर्क पड़ता है? But they might have such expenses. Okay, they stay in India for a while also. They might have such expenses. You need to check with that also. So you have to inculcate these in your checklist as well. Okay. 115 AC, it's okay. Tax on income of GDR and all this also has these kind of beneficial provision, which you can refer later on. So now we enter into the second last part of it. This will take 20 minutes and last 5 minutes on Form 67, and then we may have a discussion on questions. So far, so good. How is the Josh now? Everybody alive? What's so far so good? Can you, by show of hands or maybe a yes or a thumbs up? That would be great. Last half an hour to go. Thank you, Ruk sir. Thank you, Harsh. Thank you, Hina. Thank you, Ayer Narayan. Thank you so much. Yeah, amazing. I'm learning new names. It will be great to interact you in whichever city you are. Okay, so I'll just take a sip of water for the last half hour, then we'll start again.
Naman, would you like to take questions at this stage? There's a participant.
Okay, I'll take them.
Yeah, so can I unmute him?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Santosh, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi Santosh. Hello. Please let me know your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So regarding, we were discussing about this. Will you not take surcharge and education cess in calculating the tax? whichever is
We would
lower,
take, yes.
we will take that. Suppose the tax is same, 10% is technical fees in India, technical fee as per Indian Income Tax Act, and 10% is as per DTA. In that case, if you take this education cess and surcharge into consideration, Indian tax rate will be higher.
Yes.
And if the TDS is deducted based on the PT rate, I am required to file the return or not?
Yes, you have to file the return. So Indian rate would be considered as 10.4. The DTAA rate would be 10. So you need to file the return because you've taken a treaty benefit. Otherwise, many companies have opted to deduct TDS at 10.4 and not to file the return.
Thank you.
Most welcome. I see a lot of question over here also. Person is non-resident in India holding British passport and OCI card. He was born in India. In ITR form, whether citizen of India should be stated as yes. India holding British passport and OCI card. Citizen of India, we need to check. I think overseas citizen of India, when he is there, he is a citizen of India. So I think he can be citizen of India. That's my opinion as of now. Maybe I can check and get back to you. But when he's holding an OCI card, he would be a citizen of India. Okay, and NRI made investment abroad in his wife's name for the sake of convenience. No gift deed is made and he remains legal owner. His wife is resident. How to report same in wife's return under foreign asset schedule under which clause? So in his wife's name, then you have a foreign asset schedule where you need to mention it up. Maybe I think we've covered a foreign asset schedule which will come a little later, and you have to report it over there. NRI COVID, I have already answered that. While filing return of income for NRI, would interest earned in NRI account which is exempt required to be returned? Yes, ideally you should always exempt income. You should report it NRI income. I don't think there would be penal consequences because it is not taxable. But what happens is, let's say that person comes to India. Now, majority of them has this high income. So once they start expenses and staying in India, it's very easy to prove when you've shown, okay, this exempt income, I have taken at that point of time. This is one reason. Second reason is that these kind of interest and other income, you always have an option of an accrual or cash income. Okay, so let's say this NRI was outside India, and when he was earning this income, okay, he had earned this interest. Okay, and when he's actually received that income in India, he has become a resident. We have seen certain cases like that. Okay, what happens is tax department allege, because you did not mention at that point of time as an exempt income, you are actually treating this as a cash income and you are resident at that point of time. So now you pay tax. So I would always advise our clients, you should always advise your clients to file exempt income so that they show, okay, this is on an accrual basis and I'm fine with that. Once they come to India, maybe they are earning interest out of this, they would show only that part, that limited part as an income. Okay. I hope that's fine. I hope I have answered your questions, Sunil. Okay, let's go further. So returns and forms, now we have considered the legal part. Now we enter into procedural parts for next 15-20 minutes. These are more of a practical things. Nothing, this is more of our practical experience. So things to keep in mind for registration. So what we've done is registration, return filing, and refund. These are the three main criteria. Things to keep in mind for registration on IT portal. So check name printed on PAN card and name in PAN database. Many people, and this is like somebody who's generated PAN for 20 years, 30 years back. Normally they used to fill a last name mein bhar do. So your last name will come over there, but your name will not match. This could create a problem while filing return. This would create problem while return, because now these are very, very sensitive details. You have to have first name, middle name, last name at right places. So we have seen cases where we have actually, to file the return, we have to update the PAN database. We have to do all those things. While registration, need to take your non-resident. 2 mandatory field for registration: mobile number, email ID. Different OTP would be received. Mobile number can also be of a foreign territory. Earlier, we used to see that mobile number, Indian mobile number chahiye hota tha. Now, mobile number can also be a foreign territory. Address also can be a foreign address. That's not an issue. Okay. So this is, you need to keep in mind while registration on IT portal. Simple, but this important. Check name printed on PAN card and name, because nowhere it says what is the middle name, so double check it. Otherwise, it creates some pre-validation, refund, return filing. It creates a lot of hassle. So ऐसा नहीं है कि 30 तो कोई client आया, you would be able to file this. So just be clear of that. Okay. Which ITR to file? Again, this you can refer later on. ITR 1, it's for resident only. You cannot file that. ITR 2, you can file. ITR 3, you can file. ITR 4 is just for residents, so you cannot file that. Okay. ITR 5, you can file. ITR 6. ITR 7 is interesting. Foreign trust registered in Indian Trust Act, you can file that up. Foreign trust not registered in Indian Trust Act, you cannot use ITR 7. So what alternative you can use, I'm not sure, but this you cannot do that. Some of the relevant schedules in filing returns, some of the relevant schedules, important. So till I think 15 or 20 days back, the new category which had come in, 6(1)A, 660 and 66D, 120 days wala category, and somebody who is 6(1)A, resident of any country where he is not paying tax due to his residency, those options were not there 15-20 days back. Now in the recent update of this version, this option has come in, so it's very, very important to fill, obviously to select the correct residential status. Schedule asset liability. So if your total income exceeds 50 lakh, okay, it is mandatory to disclose the details of movable, immovable assets. Okay, it will include Indian as well foreign asset, even though the same under Schedule FA. Okay, but many people ask that question. And categorically, I am stating that for non-resident or RNOR, only the details of asset located in India are to be mentioned. They do not, while filing this return, they do not need to report their global assets. Only the details of asset located in India needs to be mentioned. Okay, let's go further. Schedule exempt income EI. In Schedule EI, you need to provide your details of exempt income. There was a question also. Okay. And this also fortifies my thought that even if the income is not chargeable to tax as per DTAA, you need to file the return. Otherwise, why would there be, why would there be this column? Yeah, this is not whether income which is not chargeable to tax or DTAA is an exempt income. I do not believe so. It's an exempt income. Okay, but it is in a Schedule EI. So income not chargeable to tax as per DTAA, you need to fill this up, and it fortifies my position that the tax department wants to file the return when you need to take the, when you're taking a treaty position, when you're taking a beneficial treaty position, you need to file that return. So ye bhi important hai, dhyan rakhiye. Okay. Then there are some schedules which are not applicable to residents. Okay. So summary of tax relief claimed in India, it is not. Sometimes people see foreign sources linked here. We might need to file this up. Okay, so this is not at all relevant. Schedule FA, okay, is not at all. AL was there, FA nahi. Okay, so the schedule FA need not to be put in. Okay, FA is, it describes all the foreign assets. Wherever you need to fill this up, you need to. This is not for residents. This is not for non-resident and RNO. Okay, this is only for residents. Okay, again, schedule foreign source income. This is applicable for resident only. You do not need to fill them up. You really do not need to fill them up. Okay, so these are some of the schedules, important schedules which we wanted to take. Now coming to the very, very important one, refund. Okay, refund, and it's a literally pain sometimes to get, once the filing is got wrong, or there maybe some account number is mentioned wrong or something, and the refund is rejected. It's a really pain actually to get the refund. But refund can only be provided in an NRO account. Okay, so remember, whenever you are filing and you are ticking that ye account mein refund aana chahiye, it should be an NRO account. Okay, bank account mandatorily required to pre-validated. And therefore, all this, name matching, PAN matching, all these needs to happen. For refund of taxes, bank account mandatorily required to be pre-validated. That is very, very important. Okay. So for successful pre-validation, and now these, instead of a tax expert, they have become a filing expert. Okay. You need to understand the technicalities of the income tax return website more than you understand the technicality of taxation. So for a successful pre-validation, you must have a valid PAN registered with e-filing and an active bank account linked with that PAN. Everything needs to be there. Okay, the pre-validation process is automatic, and this is source of income tax side only. I'm not stating my own. Once your request is submitted, it is sent to your bank. The validation status is updated in your e-filing account within 10-12 days. So take that margin. If you're filing a return of, if you're planning to file the return of any new NRI, tell them that if you want a refund, you process had. So ऐसा नहीं है कि you come to me on Christmas and wants the return to be filed by New Year. Okay, because these all registration and everything will take time. This is obviously a one-time effect, but that needs to be done. The pre-validation needs to be done. Some banks also open SNRR account. They say, बहुत सारे, there are NRIs and companies, foreign companies who do not have any business in India, but they want to get a refund. Many banks do not open their account, that you do not have any source, anything in India. Some banks offer this facility of SNRR account, and for that, the refund is credited in this account. So this could be used for refund also. So see, I'm taking more of a practical side of it, whatever practical case. There are a lot of refund reissue. Refund is rejected. So prerequisite for refund reissue, you cannot ask refund reissue for delay of refund. Ki yaar, ek saal ho gaya, it's been 1 year, my refund is not coming, let me ask for refund reissue. No, until unless there is a failure or refund and there is a pre-validated bank account, you cannot ask for a refund. Okay, you really cannot ask for a refund. So these two things are it's a prerequisite. So these are the steps. You need to log in, you need to go to refund reissue. Okay, you need to create it. There has to be a rejection, then only the refund reissue would happen. Okay, you need to select a bank account, and obviously this bank account could be different than the bank account which you had mentioned at the time of filing of return, because it got rejected at that point of time, and that is why you are asking for a new bank account. So this validation, you have to verify it, and then after successful verification, it gives you a preferred option for e-verify page, and that is where the pain starts. Okay, that is where that's sometimes very, very difficult. These all steps are fine. Okay, that is where the actual pain starts. So refund reissue, you have to go to e-verify, Aadhaar OTP. There are 5 options. Aadhaar OTP, most of the non-resident does not have an Aadhaar. Companies ko to nahi hoga, but individuals also they don't have Aadhaar. If you are not a resident in India, you may not require an Aadhaar also. So most of them don't have it. So Aadhaar OTP gets cancelled. EVC, you should have an Indian mobile number for OTP. So this again become a problem. I'm telling you, there are various cases where people do not have an Indian mobile number. They do not keep it. People who are regularly traveling to India do have the Indian bank, Indian mobile number for OTP, but people who do not travel may not have Indian OTP. So this becomes a problem. Bank ATM, I have not seen at least anybody going to bank ATM and get your code. I am not sure how it is happening. So practically no experience. Okay, net banking is a one good way you could do that. Okay, but sometimes it's very difficult to explain to client, to go to a net banking and tell them to do it, because it's a very sensitive thing. People do not obviously will share any credentials. Okay, you need to take them on a TeamViewer or a Team or a Zoom and do it. But again, it's very complex. People don't want to see their bank account and everything, so it becomes very problem. The easiest thing is digital signature. Okay, get the DSC done, get it done. DSC is not very expensive also, but it's very, very risky, and it's risky on a part of a professional also, because you are filing that, your IP address is there could be identity theft. These DSCs with many of your people. Okay, this could be a very, very potential issue. Somebody will say, we never know, ye to hamare CA karte hain. And the kind of inquiries which are coming to CA for audits, I'm not very sure. I'm actually very sure in 4 or 5 years, even for returns and everything, इन्होंने हमको बताया था ये black money के अंदर ऐसा कर लो, इन्होंने हमको ये बताया था, these are the option given to us. So we we avoid it when people are not in India, because the IP address is different, everything is different. So it's a very, very difficult thing, or we take a very, very I would say strict restricted power of authority to use their DSC, and it should be a process for every return, but typically for non-resident also, until unless they say us yes on a email, we do not file the return. So that also needs to be considered while filing return. These are all kind of practical issues. Okay. Also, these are the preferred banks of income tax. You will not find them on any. At least I have not seen them on the portal or anywhere on the site. These were shared with us, I think 5-6 months back when we had an issue ki aap batao kaun se bank mein karna chahiye. So their help desk shared these banks. Okay, so preferably if you have these banks, then it is much better. Okay, so this is there. Miscellaneous issues for non-resident. We have just 10 minutes left and I will like to close by 8. Okay. Check residential status every year because they travel so much. Passport malum nahi padta. Once the case comes in, it's very difficult to ascertain. So tell them to maintain a travel diary. Give them an Excel sheet when they were in India and when they were outside India. As simple as that. It's very important. For filing of return, you need to stay in India for previous year and preceding 4 financial years. Jurisdiction name भी देना पड़ता है कहाँ आप अगर NRI थे तो tax identification number of that jurisdiction. Sometimes TIN is not available because वहाँ पे tax ही नहीं है. So you fill 99999. Okay, those kind of, or a passport number you can fill. At least some people don't want to give their passport also. So this needs to be filled. Reconcile your income with 26 AS and the AIS. Many non-resident, and I've seen people from Gulf countries majorly. We did not do any transaction. You see the 26 AS, so many transactions. Or a AIS, short, it's a ticking time bomb if they are not follow those. ये भी अलग बात है कि in AIS and in 26 years there are some transactions which they have not done and are appearing specifically in AIS. Okay, so but the point is that you need to follow that. You need to understand what are the transactions, whether the correct has been correctly reported or not. You could also reject. These are not my transaction. Like even pledging of shares are showing as a transfer of share. So those needs to be considered. Those all needs to be considered, but you need to reconcile. For NRI senior citizen, the slab rate is 2,50,000. Remember, the slab rate is not the normal resident senior citizen. No 87A rebate is available for non-resident. So transaction till 4 lakh. For a resident, the tax would be nil, but for a non-resident, nahi hoga aisa. Okay, na? If your status is changed from resident to NRI or vice versa, you must provide a declaration to your tax deductor so that they can deduct appropriate TDS. What happens is they do not appropriate, then you may be taking the refund or anything that would cause a problem to them. So tell them that you better update the status. As per section 140, a non-resident company can file return via its power of attorney holder, and such POA should be attached in the return. Where to attach, I don't know. So you may have to go to an AO or write an email, or maybe keep with you before going into that, before filing the return. Taxman demand for PAN details. Ye Economic Times ka article which we picked up. So yeah, what happens is they said for a non-corporate SSC, you need to take PAN for all the people. Many, for foreign portfolio investor are part of, at least 50%, which the article says, is in the way of trust. And so all the trustees, PAN number is required to be given, which is very difficult because these are highly, high level people. And even if somebody wants to give, why would they give it? They have this problem that they could be traced by income tax authorities, even if they are just doing, there are sovereign funds also in this thing. So this is actually put FK in a spot. Difficult thing to understand why they have done that. Okay, they could have just given one PAN for somebody who's filing this up for an authorized signature. This could lead to personal liability. This could lead to many other things. Consequences of non-filing a return, please tell your clients this is important. That is why most of the people file return, because there are some penalties. This is a very, very important step. Okay. Last point of the day for 4 or 5 minutes, and then we can take a few questions. Foreign tax credit. This is not necessary. This is out of the course today. This is not, technically filed for a non-resident return. This would be filed when a resident, okay, wants to take credit of taxes paid outside India. Okay, and what was the controversy and what is the current one? Recent case came up, and that is why I wanted to discuss this thing. So for taking that credit, you need to file Form 67. As per the rule 128, timeline to file is due date mentioned as 139. That is the due date for original filing return. You need to put it, file it, and then maybe you need to file your return. Then only this claim. Many people were not technically aware of this, and when they became aware, they filed this return. The income tax office rejected all this. They say machinery provisions hai, you did not file before filing of the return or before filing of this due date, and therefore we will not allow you this credit. Okay, and many people, there are a lot hue and cry because many people forgot to file this, thought कि चलो ये छोटी सी चीज है, and many people have not filed it yet. Okay, and as soon the notice came, they filed it. So there was one Hyderabad case earlier which was on facts, but now this recent case, Ms. Brinda Ramakrishna, this is not a reported case as of now. I have not seen the reportation, but you can see this ITA number 454, Bangalore 2021. It says that foreign tax credit can be claimed even when Form 67 is filed. So, Usha, you are asking the right question. Can we file revised return and then file with it? People did that. They filed Form 67 and then revised. But what happened was, it happened after the original due date of 139.1. Okay, and they filed this belated return. In that cases, they said, no, we will not allow this refund because this has crossed this limit. You may file the return belated, but you cannot file this Form 67 belated as per the rule 120. Okay, lot of representation have gone. I have also been one part of the representation which has gone through this. Okay, but the court categorically ruled this is a machinery provision, and when your act provides it, when the DTAA provides us this credit, and when the DTAA does not itself tell that you need to file before the return, okay, then you cannot stop these refund, these credits. You have to give it. Okay, though I agree with the analogy that this should be provided, this foreign tax credit, but I do not agree with somehow the analogy used. I've agreed with the outcome. Analogy is this: DTAA does not prescribe any due date, and therefore we should be allowed. I think DTAA never prescribes. My view is that DTAA only and only prescribe how to divide the taxes and give that credit. It does not prescribe any of the machinery provisions. Okay, but however, is the same conclusion is that this is just a machinery provision. This is not substantive. You cannot, throw away my right just by timeline. And there are many cases like that in 80IA cases, in 10AA cases, that you have filed it later and it has been allowed. So machinery provision cannot just overrule. Machinery provision just cannot overrule the enabling taxation provision, and that's the whole idea behind it. Okay, in AY 21, the due date is filing return is 31st December. So yeah, that is also thankfully that has at least been considered. Okay, and I move towards my last slide, which is not a tax slide, but the ultimate gyan. Within infinite midst lies the eternal truth. Who sees it all? Varuna has but 1,000 eyes. Indra has 100. You and I only 2. So we just have 2 eyes. We see from our own perspective. Taxmen see from their perspective. We do not know what is the eternal truth, and that is what we are searching for. Hope the session was interactive. The session you benefited out of this. Me and my team practically benefited out of it a lot while making this presentation. We learned a lot. Hope it was good session for you to attend, and hope I created a lot of controversies, opened a lot of mind, and hope I gave you a good food for thought